Black Friday at the Mall of America has a sound all its own. Shopping bags slapping against legs, children whining about their feet hurting, the air thick with the smell of warm pretzels and department store perfume. It was the kind of noise that swallowed you whole, which is exactly why I almost missed what my daughter saw first. Lily was 11 years old, sharp as a tack, and she had her fingers locked around mine so tightly that her knuckles had gone completely white. She yanked me sideways behind one of those fake marble pillars near the main rotunda and pressed her back against it like we were hiding from something dangerous. "Don't move," she whispered. I leaned forward just enough to peek around the pillar, and my brain genuinely struggled to process what I was seeing. There was my husband, Ethan, walking through the mall like he owned every square inch of it. And right beside him was Doris, his mother, except she looked nothing like the frail, confused woman who had been sitting on my couch just the night before asking Lily the same question over and over again. This version of Doris was walking on heels, not shuffling, not gripping a walker, not squinting in confusion. She had a glossy blowout, a perfectly fitted coat, and she was laughing. Actually laughing out loud while Ethan held her elbow the way a man holds the arm of someone he is proud to be seen with. Lily's breath came fast and shallow against my sleeve. "That's her," she said, her voice tight and small. I did not answer because my throat had decided to stop cooperating. That morning, Ethan had texted me that he was taking his mom to the clinic. He had looked tired and responsible and concerned when he left. And now here he was browsing the jewelry wing of a shopping mall with a woman who had apparently forgotten she was supposed to need a cane. I squeezed Lily's hand twice, our quiet code for stay close and stay calm. Then I watched as Ethan guided this woman toward a jewelry kiosk with velvet trays under bright display lights. She lifted her wrist and turned it slowly, letting the light catch her skin. Her nails were freshly done, the manicure so perfect it looked like it was still wet. I thought about Doris at our house, the one who claimed the smell of nail polish gave her headaches. Ethan tapped something on his phone screen, and the sales associate straightened up immediately, suddenly more attentive, more careful, the way people get when they realize there is real money in front of them. Ethan tucked something small into his jacket pocket and then guided the woman toward Nordstrom with his palm resting at the small of her back. That was not how a son touches his mother. I turned Lily so her face was hidden against my coat, and we moved with the crowd in the opposite direction, slow and steady, blending in. Running makes you visible. I had learned that somewhere and I held on to it. We walked through the food court, ordered a bottle of water neither of us touched, and found a corner table tucked behind a stanchion where I could see all the entrances. Lily's eyes kept darting toward the doors like she expected Ethan to appear and catch us. "Talk to me," I said softly. She kept her voice so low I had to lean in to hear her. "Grandma Doris told me not to tell you something." The words came out in a clipped, careful way, like she had been rehearsing them and dreading the moment she would have to say them out loud. "Last week when you were at work, she said someone was coming over. She told me that if you asked, I should say nobody came." My stomach tightened into a knot. I asked who came over. Lily shook her head. She said she had not seen the person. Ethan had taken her to her room and told her it was adult stuff. Then Doris had corrected Lily on something small, the way she corrected her on everything, and grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough to make a point. Lily's eyes dropped to my hands. She said she felt like she had done something wrong by telling me. I put my palm over hers. I told her she had done nothing wrong. I meant every single word. Her shoulders dropped just a little, the tension releasing in small fractions. Then she looked up at me and said, "And she can walk. I saw her in the garage. She walked like a totally normal person." My kid had been carrying all of that by herself. The drive down the parking ramp felt like sinking into a quieter kind of noise. Lily stared out the window at the concrete walls scrolling past, and my phone buzzed on the center console. Ethan. The text said the clinic was running late and his mom was confused and I should not worry. I did not respond right away. I just sat there in the parking spot with the engine off, looking at my daughter, and I told her we were going to do exactly what we always did. We were going home. She was going to eat and do her homework and let me be the adult in the room. She nodded, but she did not look relieved. She looked like a kid who had learned to brace for the next thing. At home that evening, Ethan came back after dark carrying a pharmacy bag like it was a stage prop. He sighed about what a rough day it had been and leaned in to kiss my cheek, but it landed wrong, like something that had been practiced instead of felt. From the couch, Doris called out in her sweet, wavery voice asking if she had already met me today. Ethan shot me a look that said play along. I played along. After Lily went to bed, I found a stack of papers on the kitchen counter held together with one of Ethan's sticky notes. The note said to sign them so he could help with his mother's care. It was not for his mother's care. It was a durable power of attorney packet with blank signature lines waiting for my name. I slid the whole thing into my work bag without making a sound. That was the moment I got very quiet inside. The kind of quiet that is not peace but preparation. A week before all of this, my life had been measured in due dates and utility bills. I would sit at the kitchen table after Lily fell asleep with my laptop open, and the bills spread out in neat piles like organizing them gave me some kind of control. Ethan would hover behind me, rubbing the back of his neck and running through his usual lines. He was trying. The job market was brutal. He always said the word brutal like he was reading a weather forecast, completely detached from the fact that it was our life we were talking about. I would ask where he had applied that day, and he would answer with fog. A few places, some leads, a call he was waiting on. Meanwhile, the mortgage went through because I paid it. Lily's orthodontist happened because I scheduled it. Doris's care had become my third job because Ethan had sworn she could not be left alone. She was declining, he kept saying, his eyes going soft and shiny. Just until he was working again, he said, "Please." One night I pointed at the spreadsheet and told him plainly that we were living on one real paycheck. His face tightened for half a second before he smoothed it back out. He told me we had assets. He glanced toward the hall closet where the safe was kept and did not say the word out loud, but it hung between us anyway. He had started counting things that were not his. Doris had arrived at our front door with a walker and a suitcase and oversized sweaters and a helpless smile that made people want to take care of her on instinct. I had only met Ethan's mother a handful of times before. She lived out of state. I had no reason to look at her sideways. The first day she forgot Lily's name twice. Lily was polite about it. The second day Doris made her fetch a glass of water and then complained it was too cold. Ethan patted his mother's shoulder with the patience of a saint and told Lily, loud enough that I could hear from the next room, that her brain was slipping and she did not mean anything by it. But slipping brains do not track household power the way Doris tracked it. She asked where we kept the spare keys within the first 2 days. She asked Lily whether she had chores like a real family. She corrected how Lily set the table and informed her that in a real family, children showed respect. One afternoon, Lily came into the kitchen with her lips pressed tight together and told me quietly that Doris had gone into her room. I walked to Lily's doorway and saw the dresser drawers hanging slightly open. Doris was on the couch in the living room with her hands folded, staring at the television like she had been there all afternoon and had not moved once. I asked her directly if she had gone into Lily's room. She blinked slowly and said, "Did I?" Then she looked at Ethan. Ethan stepped in front of her immediately like he was physically blocking a question. He told me not to interrogate her. Then he softened his voice and reminded me that she got confused. Confused people do not test boundaries that cleanly. The bracelet came to our house in a slim black box with a lawyer's letter attached to it. Lily's biological father had died when she was very small, and his family had old money they kept tucked behind words like trust and fiduciary and discretion. The bracelet was antique, heavy, set with stones that caught light in a way that made you stop and look. The appraisal letter that came with it estimated the value somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000, depending on market and condition. I did not show Lily the number. I showed her the box and told her it was hers when she was older and that it was safe. I put the appraisal paperwork in a folder, placed the bracelet in our small home safe, and memorized the combination the way you memorize something you cannot afford to forget. Ethan watched the whole process from the doorway without saying anything. Later that night, when I told him the estimate, his eyebrows went up before he could stop them. He said that was a lot, and his voice changed shape when he said it. He asked whether Lily's trust was handling her college. I told him the trust paid what the trustees approved. His jaw moved just slightly. He asked if I was the one in contact with the lawyers. That number rewired something in him. A few days after the bracelet arrived, documents started appearing on the counter. Ethan would leave them there casually, forms with helpful little tabs sticking out, sections highlighted in yellow, sticky notes that pretended to be offhand reminders. One evening, he slid a paper toward me while I was making coffee and said it would just make things easier. If something happened to me, he said, he would need the authority to help Lily, to help his mother. He said it was standard. I read the header, durable power of attorney, not for Lily, for me, for my assets and my financial decisions. I set it down and told him I was not signing anything that night. Ethan exhaled like I was being unreasonable. He asked why I was like this. I asked like what? He leaned in close and told me in a low, intense voice that I was acting like he was trying to steal from me. He reminded me he was my husband. He said I did not lock my husband out. Right on cue, Doris called from the living room in a perfectly timed, trembling voice that she was scared again. Ethan's eyes flicked toward her and back to me. He said she needed us. He used the word us like it was a weapon aimed directly at the part of me that still wanted things to be normal. And suddenly, everything in that house was about access. The morning I ran into Jake Miller, I had not slept more than 3 hours. Doris had woken Lily up at 2 in the morning because she could not find the bathroom, and Ethan had slept through the whole thing like someone had turned him off at a switch. I dropped Lily at school and drove with my jaw clenched to a coffee shop near my office because I needed caffeine and 5 minutes where nobody needed a single thing from me. That is when someone said my name like it actually mattered. I turned around and saw a man in a plain jacket with short hair and familiar eyes. We had gone to the same high school back when my biggest problem was a chemistry test I had not studied for. He smiled and then, noticing me staring at his belt, flashed a badge. He was a detective now, based in Bloomington most days. I gave a tired laugh that did not come close to reaching my face. He studied me for a moment, not casually, the way someone does when they are actually paying attention. He asked if I was okay. I hesitated and then said the smallest true thing I could manage. Something felt off at home. Jake did not pry. He slid a card across the table and told me that if I ever needed to talk something through, just to reality check it, I should call him. My phone buzzed, a notification from our door sensor. The front door had been opened. I had not told anyone my schedule had changed that day. I drove home fast but not reckless because Lily needed a mother, not a tragedy. When I pulled into the driveway, the first clue was not broken glass or an open door. It was silence. The porch light was off even though I had left it on. The front door was not wide open. It was unlatched, the way a door looks when someone has taken care to close it quietly behind themselves. Inside, the air smelled sharp and cold, like disturbed dust. The living room looked almost right but not quite. The throw blanket was on the floor. The side table drawer was cracked open an inch. Lily's bedroom closet light was on. In the kitchen, a chair had been pushed back at an odd angle, and my work bag, where I had tucked Ethan's paperwork, was tipped onto its side with papers peeking out. I crouched and slid the documents back inside. I stood up and did not call Ethan's name. I did not call for Doris. I walked straight to the hall closet. The storage bins in front of the safe had been moved. Not knocked over, just shifted slightly, the way careful people move things when they are trying to leave things looking untouched but did not quite manage it. I knelt down and spun the dial with fingers that felt too cold. The door swung open. The black bracelet box was still inside. For half a second, I could breathe again. Then I saw the empty space beneath it where my folder should have been sitting. The appraisal packet, the paper trail, my proof, gone. I checked the box anyway. The bracelet was not in it. Just tissue paper folded into the shape of a cruel joke. I sat back on my heels, not crying, not shaking, just recalculating. I called Ethan. He answered on the second ring, cheerful and easy. I asked where he was. There was a small pause and then a laugh. At the clinic, he said. Where else would he be? I stared at the faint scratch near the door frame, the kind of mark you can leave with a key when you know how to work a latch without forcing it. I told him someone had been inside the house. Ethan inhaled like I was already annoying him. He told me not to start. He said I was always imagining things. I hung up and called the number on Jake's card. Jake did not show up with sirens or theater. He showed up the way actual help looks, which is quick, quiet, and completely unimpressed by drama. He walked through the front door, took in the tipped chair and the moved bins and the location of the safe, and asked simple questions in a level tone. When had I last seen the bracelet? Who knew where it was kept? Were there cameras anywhere in the house? I answered without extras. Jake crouched by the front door and ran his finger along the latch. He said this was not a random smash and grab. They had not touched the television. They had not taken my laptop. He walked into the kitchen and opened a drawer I had not checked yet. My checkbook was in there, and a stack of unopened mail, completely untouched. He said they had come for one specific thing. I told him they had also taken paperwork. His eyes lifted to mine. He said that a thief who knows what an appraisal document looks like is either experienced or informed. He stood and looked at Doris's knitting sitting perfectly arranged on the side table. He asked who had access to the house. I said my husband, his mother, and a caregiver we had used briefly. Jake nodded once, like he had already run the math. He told me to file it properly and to treat it like an inside job until something proved otherwise. Ethan came home that evening carrying takeout like a man bringing a peace offering. Doris shuffled in behind him, leaning heavy on her walker, her eyes watery and vague. Ethan set the food down and stared at Jake's business card on my counter like it was something contagious. He snapped at me for calling a cop. I corrected him and said detective because our safe had been opened. Doris gasped softly and said, "Oh my," in her son's home. Ethan pressed his palms flat against the counter and told me we used insurance for things like this. We did not drag strangers into family business. Jake had already left by then, but Ethan was acting as if he might still be standing in the pantry. I told Ethan the bracelet was gone. Doris sank onto the couch like her bones had dissolved, moaning that poor Lily would be devastated. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway for just a fraction of a second, sharp and alert. Ethan leaned close to me and dropped his voice low. He said it was just a thing. We would handle it. I should not stir it up. Then he reached out his hand, palm up, and asked to see my phone. He wanted to know what I had told Jake. He said it like it was a completely reasonable request. I slid my phone into my pocket and said no. Doris murmured from the couch that I did not trust family. They were not afraid of the theft. They were afraid of daylight. 2 days later, I ran into Carla in the produce aisle at Target. She had been coming by the house a few hours each day back when Ethan was insisting Doris needed round-the-clock attention. Carla was warm and competent, and she had treated Lily like a person who deserved to be spoken to directly. Then one afternoon, she had sent me an apologetic text saying she could not come back. Ethan had told me Doris accused her of stealing medication. I had hated the story, but I had been too tired to look at it closely. Carla's eyes went wide when she saw me. She said she had been meaning to call. We drifted to the end of the aisle near the banana display and pretended to compare prices while she told me what had actually happened. Doris had not accused her of anything. Ethan had. He told Carla that Doris felt unsafe with her in the house. When Carla asked why, he said it was because she had been writing things down. Because she had been writing down what she observed. Carla told me Doris was not confused. Not most days. She would do the confused act when Ethan was in the room, forgetting names and staring blankly, but the moment he left, she would pull out a smartphone and scroll through it like any other woman sitting alone in a living room. Carla mentioned the perfume too. Not the kind of perfume an elderly woman reaches for by habit. Expensive and deliberate, and her nails were always freshly done. I asked Carla if she was sure. She said she was sure enough that she had gotten fired for noticing. After that, I watched Doris the way you watch a glass sitting too close to the edge of a table. I did not stare. I did not accuse. I just paid attention. On Tuesday morning, she could not figure out how to work the television remote, but she remembered the passcode to Ethan's phone when he handed it across to her. On Wednesday, she said her joints hurt too badly to stand. 5 minutes later, when she thought I was in the laundry room, she walked to the front window without her walker, spine straight, and peered out at the street like a woman watching for someone to arrive. I stood completely still behind the doorway and listened. She hummed under her breath, and it was not old or shaky. It was light, almost young. Later that afternoon, she leaned close to Ethan in the kitchen and said, "Baby, did you talk to her yet?" The word baby landed in my chest like something dropped from a height. Ethan's head snapped up, he saw me, and his smile stretched out too wide and too fast. He said loudly, "Mom, remember we talked about calling me Ethan?" Doris blinked and did her helpless routine, asking if she had said something wrong. I nodded like it did not matter. Inside, something went very still. The next lie they wanted from me was going to cost them instead. I went back to the Mall of America on Black Friday under the cover of returning a coat. That was not what it was. It was confirmation. I kept Lily close and did not tell her the full picture because she deserved to be a child, not an investigator on her own mother's case. We came in through a quieter entrance near the hotel, and I spotted them almost immediately. Ethan was in the jewelry wing again. No walker anywhere near the woman beside him. No hunched shoulders, no slow, careful steps. She moved with the easy confidence of someone completely at home in her own body. And her face was not quite right. Her hair was darker than Doris's at the house. Her face was less lined. When she turned slightly, I saw a small tattoo near her wrist that I had never once noticed on the woman sleeping on my couch. A sales clerk smiled and said that her private counter was ready, calling her Vanessa. The woman tilted her head and smiled like someone who had already decided how the story ended. Ethan stayed right beside her, guiding her with the kind of easy familiarity that had no place in a mother and son relationship. Lily's grip on my hand went rigid. Vanessa's eyes swept the crowd and landed on us. For a split second, her smile dropped completely. Ethan followed her gaze, found me standing there, and the color left his face like water draining out of a glass. I did not wave. I did not step toward him. I turned Lily gently toward the exit and said we were leaving. That was the moment I got calm for good. The next morning, I called in late to work, dropped Lily at school, and drove to an inheritance attorney's office with steady hands on the wheel. I did not tell Ethan where I was going. I brought everything I had. Trust correspondence, the appraisal email chain, the police report number Jake had given me, and the unsigned power of attorney packet Ethan had been sliding toward me for weeks. The attorney was a woman with sharp glasses and a voice that did not waste a single word. She listened while I laid out the facts in order. She confirmed that Ethan had no rights to Lily's trust assets and no standing to access them, but that he could cause serious damage if I gave him access through me. I told her I would not be doing that. She slid papers across the desk. Protective filings, asset safeguards, a trust structure that put Lily first and made my signature something much harder to exploit. I signed everything with a calm that felt unfamiliar and good. Then I called the trust contact directly and asked them to flag any request connected to Ethan's name. On the way to my car, I froze my credit from my phone in the parking lot the same way I would add something to a grocery list. Ethan was waiting when I got home. Doris was beside him in her sweater, looking soft and small. He said brightly that he had brought more papers to make things easier. I smiled a small smile and told him I had already signed papers with my attorney. Ethan and Doris changed expressions at exactly the same moment, going pale and flat, suddenly very aware that something had shifted outside their control. My quiet move landed like a door locking from the inside. That afternoon, Jake met me at a public cafe, bright and busy and impossible to turn into anything suspicious. I slid everything across the table to him. The timeline, Carla's account, the mall confirmation, the attorney's notes. Jake did not look surprised. He looked focused. He told me that if they had stolen the bracelet, they would try to move it, but that high-value antique pieces were hard to sell cleanly. I said we should make it harder. He helped me draft a simple notice for local dealers and pawn shops. No drama, just the stolen item report number and a clear description. He also walked me through exactly what I could legally record inside my own home without creating problems for the case later. We chose cameras, not because it felt sneaky, but because it was clean and clear and defensible. I installed 2 small ones myself, one facing the hallway, one angled toward the closet where the safe was. Nothing in bedrooms. Nothing invasive. Then I did the part that felt like swallowing something sharp. I called Ethan while he was in the next room and let him hear me say I was meeting with someone about Lily's assets and that there was another appraisal file I needed to locate. I let a pause sit in the air between us. His voice sharpened immediately. Another file, he said, a beat too fast. I told him it was just paperwork and not to worry. He worried. That evening I made dinner like normal. Lily did her math homework at the kitchen table. I kept the house deliberately boring. Ethan hovered near the cabinets pretending to be helpful, asking questions he already knew the answers to. He asked what the lawyer had said. I told him casually that Lily's trust was protected. He smiled with the lower half of his face only. Doris drifted in wrapped in a blanket and looked at Lily's homework and sighed about numbers being hard. Lily did not respond. After Lily went upstairs, Ethan dropped the casual act. He told me in a firm voice to let him see the documents. He said he was my husband, and that if I did not trust him, what exactly were we doing here? I held his gaze and told him I was keeping Lily safe. Something passed across his face then, fast and ugly, gone almost before it arrived. They were going to move soon. I could feel it the way you can feel a change in weather before the sky gives anything away. The next day, I created the opening without announcing it. I told Ethan I needed to pick Lily up early for a school appointment and that I would be gone for about an hour. That was not true. Lily was safe at school. I had already quietly updated her pickup authorization and the password with the front office. Small practical moves made in advance without fanfare. I left the house, drove around the block, and parked where I had a clear view of my front walkway without being obvious. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Then the front door opened slowly and Ethan stepped out onto the porch, looked down the street in both directions the way a person does when they are checking for witnesses, and raised his hand. A car pulled up and Vanessa got out wearing Doris's cardigan like a disguise she had grown tired of. She moved fast and without any limp at all. They went inside together. On the camera feed, I watched them go straight to the hall closet. Ethan shoved the bins aside with practiced hands. Vanessa's voice came through clean and clear. She said to hurry. Ethan said he knew exactly where it was kept. Then Vanessa said, bright and certain, that the buyer was not going to wait forever. Ethan laughed under his breath. He said that once they had it, I could not do anything about it. Vanessa opened the safe with a speed that made my skin crawl. She snapped at him asking where the folder was. His voice went tight. He said I must have moved it. They tore through drawers anyway, angry and sloppy and getting louder, and that is exactly when they talked themselves directly into handcuffs. Jake did not kick my door in. He coordinated with 2 uniformed officers the way someone does when they have done this before and want it to hold up in court. When Ethan and Vanessa came back out of the house empty-handed and buzzing with frustration, they stopped cold at the curb. Jake stepped forward, calm and direct. He said Ethan's name. He said they needed to talk about a burglary and a stolen item. Ethan's mouth opened and then closed. Vanessa immediately tried to fold herself back into the Doris character, hunching slightly and putting a tremor into her voice. She told the officer she did not understand what was happening. She said she was just his mother. Jake's expression did not shift at all. He told her that her name was Vanessa and that they had video and audio of her discussing a buyer for a stolen item. Vanessa's face cracked. Anger came through it fast and sharp, and her voice snapped back to its real register, young and hard and completely uninterested in pretending anymore. She said this was insane. Ethan took a half step backward like he was considering whether running was a real option. One of the officers redirected him quietly with a hand at his elbow. Then Ethan looked at me. I had walked up and was standing beside Jake, not shaking, not crying, just there. Ethan's voice went pleading and fast. He told me to tell them it was a misunderstanding. I looked at him and said that he had broken into my safe and stolen from Lily. The words came out plain because that is what they were. His story died in public, which is the only place stories like his ever really die. By the time Lily came home that afternoon, Ethan was gone, and the house felt like a place that belonged to me and my daughter. I told her only what she needed to know. Ethan had made choices that were not safe, and he would not be coming back. Lily sat very still on the couch for a moment, and then nodded once, slowly, like someone releasing a breath they had been holding for a long time. The next morning, I changed the locks myself with a kit from the hardware store and felt the screws biting clean into the door frame. I canceled the spare code on the garage keypad. I collected every emergency key Ethan had scattered around in the way people scatter keys when they want to keep doors open for themselves. Jake helped me file for a protective order, not as a dramatic statement, but as a practical boundary with real consequences attached to it. Then the second wave hit. My phone showed a fraud alert, an attempted large purchase on our old joint card at an electronics store. I did not call Ethan. I did not argue or ask for an explanation. I declined the charge, called the bank, and shut the card down entirely. Within an hour, there was another attempt, this time at an online cash transfer service. The pattern was frantic, like a man who has just watched every exit close at once and is running at walls. I opened a group message with Ethan's sister and his aunt, anyone who might check in on the Doris situation, and I wrote one factual sentence. Ethan and Vanessa were not permitted at my home or at Lily's school, and I asked them not to share our location with anyone. No emojis, no anger in the words, just a clear, flat line drawn in plain language. A week later, a jewelry dealer called the number on the stolen item notice. He said carefully that they had received an inquiry about a bracelet matching my description. He said they had not purchased it. He wanted to verify the report first. I thanked him and forwarded everything directly to Jake. The bracelet surfaced the way stolen things usually surface, not through a dramatic confrontation, but through a paper trail and someone who simply did not want the trouble that came with handling something dirty. When Jake handed me the evidence bag at the station, I did not open it right away. I just asked him if it was really back. He said it was. I drove home and opened the bag at my kitchen table with Lily sitting beside me. The bracelet caught the afternoon light exactly the same way it always had. Heavy and cold and completely real. Lily did not reach out and touch it right away. She just looked at it for a long moment and then whispered that she was glad it was not her fault. I put it back in the box and slid it gently toward her and told her it was never her fault. It was never her fault for a single second of any of this. I filed for divorce that same week. My attorney moved quickly to make sure Lily's trust was sealed against any further interference. Vanessa called once from an unknown number. I blocked it without listening to whatever she had prepared to say. Safety is built from small, firm moves repeated consistently until they become the shape of your life. A few months later, we moved into a smaller place with bright windows and neighbors who kept to themselves the way good neighbors do. I kept our routines tight. School pickup passwords, credit monitoring, doors locked the same way every single night. The bracelet went into a safe deposit box registered in Lily's name and managed through the trust the way it should have been handled from the very beginning. Sometimes at night, Lily would ask me a small practical question while she was brushing her teeth. She asked once whether someone could pretend to be family again and get inside our life. I answered her with facts instead of fear. I told her they could try, and I told her we could stop them. Jake checked in every now and then with brief factual updates, never overstepping, never making it into something it was not supposed to be. One afternoon, he dropped off the final document confirming the return of the case evidence and paused at my front door on his way out. He said simply that I had done things the right way. I told him I had done it the quiet way. From the living room, Lily called out asking if we could make hot chocolate. I said yes. Because that is what normal looks like now, and normal was the whole point.